tonight. So we have a group of 4 people presenting. The next one, we have Klaus, Oksana Arnold, Ronny Franke, and Hans-Holger Wacke from all of whom are from Germany. And the talk is Dynamic Planning and Digital Storyboarding for Professional Training of Accident Prevention with Time Travel Games. So we have quite a group of games here. We have the escape room game, and then we have the escape lane game, and then some time travel games, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about. So please feel free to go ahead and turn your microphone and video camera on, and I'll turn it over to you to share your screens. And I'm looking forward to hearing all about this.
Let me have a look for my PowerPoint presentation. I am the speaker-elect of our team here. We have 4 authors: Oksana Arnold, Ronny Franke, Hans-Holger Wacke, I'm Klaus Jantke, and we speak about dynamic planning and digital storyboarding. That's very closely related for professional training of accident prevention with time travel games. Here you see the 4 of us. Oksana Arnold prefers to be called Oki. You see her on the left. Ron is on the right. Hans-Holger is on the bottom, and friends call me, Klaus Jantke call me Janosch. So you see me in the background on top. There you see our enterprises. Oki comes from the University of Applied Sciences in Erfurt. Ronny from Fraunhofer IFF in Magdeburg. Hans-Holger is our training boss. He is training people to avoid accidents in the industries. And I am from Adicom Software in Weimar. The emphasis of our presentation is on accident prevention with time travel games. There is this dynamic planning and storyboarding behind, and we will talk about that. But our innovation comprises 2 aspects. First, the concept of time travel prevention games. That's really original. And second, that we do that really in a virtual world. Perhaps we are the only team worldwide having these innovations conceptually implemented and in application. But notice, we are here at the Learning Ideas Conference to give up this position, to share our knowledge and our experience. The best of an innovation is, in our opinion, when it becomes folklore for the benefit of humans all over the world. So we want to share what we are presenting. Accident prevention with time travel games is what Ronny will introduce here in 1 video, and 2 more videos are to come. So Ronny, please go ahead, show them the world in which we are training people, really.
Okay.
So now we need to switch, right? And to see how a video comes from Ronny.
Yeah, so is it there?
Ah, Ronny, I see some, oh wow, yes, this is us.
What? It's just a video? Yeah.
Yes, it is. It looks like the video, say.
Okay, then let's start the tour. Yeah, this is our virtual learning factory. This is a 3D environment, a game, in that we can move around, interact with objects, and yeah, of course, learn something. For example, here we have an area with general content of about safety at work. For example, handling missions, fire protection, traffic routes, escape ways, or here design of workplaces. Yes, some special topics are also included. For example, here's a section about handling of inert gases. So here we can learn something about the best solution in dangerous situations in typical working processes. And here is a workplace on the subject of welding and compressed gas cylinders. And Here we have an area about transportation, handling with forklifts, lift trucks, and so on. And finally, on the right side, this area is the focus of our presentation. This is a workplace for decanting flammable liquids. Okay, the tour is over. So now we switch back to Janusz.
Thanks, Ronny. So, what do we really do? The BGRCI is an institution responsible for training people in the industry. So we really deal with the true industry and with real accident prevention. The BGRCI is responsible for 34,000 enterprises in Germany. There are about 1.6 million people insured. So we take care of their health and their lives, so to say. And in the prevention center in Berlin, where Hans-Holger Wache has everything under control, we have about 30,000 trainees annually, except, unfortunately, the times of a pandemic. So we have a wonderful reach if you look at these figures. But to be honest, when the pandemic is over, we will start again. Due to the pandemic, we had a cut down for more than 1 year. And consequently, we do not have a systematic evaluation at the moment. This is still pending. So in this presentation you get here, we confine ourselves to the discussion of our ideas, of the concepts with a certain precision, and of technologies. And evaluation seems worth a separate presentation, definitely. Real training in a virtual world means that a trainee logs into the world you just saw in Ronny's video. The trainee is getting assigned a task, and then the trainee lives, so to speak, in that virtual world. And in that virtual world, it's just you. It's no avatar. There is no other vehicle. As Richard Bartle, one of the fathers in spirit of Dungeons and Dragons, put it, it's just you there, and the avatar is just the clothing you wear. You live in the world, you act in the world, and you experience what really happens. And you might experience a self-induced accident. You may also experience the mastery of the whole technology. And what that means in a real training session will be presented to you in a second by Ronny in the next part of our video. Here it comes.
So, yeah, so welcome back to the learning factory. We enter the factory and now we have a specific task. And in this case, a flammable liquid must be decanted from the container on the right side into such a barrel on the left side. And of course, all safety instructions must be observed during this working process. And therefore, at first, we need the right protection equipment. So, jacket, helmet, glasses, gloves, and the right shoes. And then we must clean up the working environment, and we must detect objects that can be dangerous for the working process. For example, smartphone and radio because of their batteries. Then we activate the ventilation. And then the container with the flammable liquid must be placed in the right zone, in the middle of our working environment. Of course, with the right transportation equipment. And then we need a barrel And now, very important, we need some objects for grounding to avoid electrostatic charges. This one and this one. Then we can open the barrel and the container. So now we have a very dangerous situation because of the flammable liquid. The gas is escaping the barrel and the container. And so it's very important now to have the right protection equipment, the right objects in the right place, in the right order. So let's go on. Next, we need such a pump. Then a counter, a pump nozzle. And then we connect the power cable, power on, pump on.
Wow, Ronny, what did you do?
Yeah, I don't know, but something we did something wrong. So, and back to Janusz.
Yeah, thank you. Sure, we had the situation. Some undesired event. In that case, an explosion. There are the right undesired events. And our key idea is the key idea we advocate here, we are going to discuss in some detail, is virtual time traveling. So you see on the right half of the screen a screenshot where to the human trainee there is an opportunity offered to travel back in time and to try it once again. What a dream if we could do that in real life. Originally, the concept of time travel prevention games has been introduced for purposes of crime prevention. We had half a decade ago cooperation, my team and me, with an agency named Polizeiliche Kriminalprävention der Länder und des Bundes. That means Police Crime Prevention of the federal states and the Federation of Germany. And together with that high-ranking institution, we worked on games, on really exciting games to teach people, to train people, to get active, to prevent particular forms of crime that play, unfortunately, a serious role in Germany. On the so-called German Prevention Day, Deutscher Präventionstag in 215, I have coined the term time travel prevention games. The organizers of the German Prevention Day in 2015 has named that novel concept a key word, Schlüsselbegriff in German, as you see it here emphasized. A student of mine, Johannes Winter, has designed a digital crime prevention game. And this was, the first realization of really that idea, that innovative idea of time travel prevention games and how it may really work in practice. Apparently, time travel prevention games may be useful in other domains, such as healthcare or accident prevention, what's now our topic. The idea is always the same. Let's travel back in time. Let's change the preparation such that the undesired event does not happen for a second time. But we must be aware that human beings are very, very different. The one might succeed the next time, others may fail again. And we need to invest a lot into a didactic design and game design to make that effective. Here is a very rough structure. We describe the key idea by means of a graph. Those graphs will later on play a key role in our technology. Here, the first appearance of a graph on a slide is just, say, an illustration. Trainees get a task there's a formulation of a task, someone speaks to them, they get some written information, maybe they see a video, they get cut scenes or whatsoever, and then they start the activities as you saw it in the video. Ronny has prepared the dress with the appropriate equipment, and they start to execute their task, and as a result, sometimes they got an unintended result, an accident or anything like that. Sometimes they succeed, and that's good, and then there's a continuation. But if they fail, we offer time travel. This is a general say, structure. But how to offer time travel to a trainee for the purpose of, say, making time travel, virtual time travel, intuitively possible, we have designed a time tunnel, in fact, a virtual time tunnel, as you can see it here, and I will enlarge it for your convenience. In that time tunnel, if you dive into the tunnel, you meet objects that represent what you have experienced in the past. You see a pump on the right, and you see a barrel on the left. The objects in the time tunnel are ordered according to time. And when you dive in, you come to objects you have seen a long time ago, and if you dive out, you see more recent objects. On top of the time tunnel, you see a button to the left. If you press a button to the left, then the wheel of time turns backward. You dive into the tunnel. If you press the button to the right, the wheel of time comes closer and turns to the present time, and the more recent objects appear in the tunnel. And when you select the middle button, then you select an object. And we have called that iconic representation of the past, because the objects we see there, they have some meaning to the human beings. The presentation of time points by means of objects is intuitive to the humans. They just click to the object and have a feeling where to go to in the past. It's interesting at this point, so there is no time to go into more details, that this apparently does not work when traveling into the future, because there are no iconic representations you can remember, you can click and travel to, because you cannot relate to things that did not yet happen. We have been asked in preparation of presentations and publications, what about time traveling to the future? This is theoretically an interesting issue. In our present work, we deal with time traveling into the past. This has been inspired by a larger number of commercial digital games. And to make it clear to those who know about this area, my personal motivation came from the Konami game, Memories of Destiny. In that game, you play a virtual character in a virtual world, and you are killed several times. And the only chance you have is to travel back in time to avoid this. And we do that here in a world where we are not killed except by our own mistakes in incorrect operations of a complex technical installation. The iconic representation of the past is the idea behind the time tunnel. The time tunnel is an implementation made by Ronny Franke at Fraunhofer EFF. And when a trainee, when traveling back, as sketched here on such a graph again, selects such an object, the trainee is sent back to the one or the other action in the past. So these arrows going back are mutually exclusive edges here in such a graph that lead from one action to the other one have execution conditions. And if there are branches, then they are normally mutually exclusive, and the one selection is preferred, that refers to certain variable values set before, such as, for example, a click of the human player. Humans learn from experience. The more touching the experience, the more effective is learning and training. It makes a difference whether a trainee has experienced an accident, especially a self-induced one. This sounds, at a first glance, like the motivation of a novel pedagogical principle, right? The pedagogical idea of deliberately damaging installations and injuring the humans at their workplace. Wow, that's effective, isn't it? And therefore, it might be effective. And honestly, we do that, but we are doing so only virtually. We want the humans really to experience the accident, to experience what may happen. They should identify with all the things that take place, but we try to keep the installations and the real humans safe. Therefore, virtual time travel in a virtual reality with all the touching effects. So we need to design that. When we plan such a game and when we implement such a game, we have to think about what human players will experience, how it is fun, perhaps even addictive, and how it works didactically. And we couldn't do better than design games that are really addictive. Imagine a trainee who comes back and wants to train again because it's such a fun to train. We have no objections against trainees who deliberately cause explosions in the virtual world or other accidents and then travel back and make it better the other time. We do not try to prevent this, because if they have their fun in training, you can't do better in professional training nowadays. And even more, if they have fun and if it's worth telling, then they tell it to other potential trainees. And then they spread information about this great training and the effect it can have for real life in the industrial practice. So, but how to design? Storyboarding is, as we put it in a 2005 paper, is the organization of experience. At these old days, there were storyboarding approaches to e-learning horribly stupid. There were people writing in scientific publications that storyboarding is the organization of learning material. They were arranging subsequent PDF documents and things like that. Humans do not learn from PDF documents. Humans may read PDF documents, not too many perhaps, but they learn from own experience. And so we developed that approach in which storyboarding is really the organization of experience. The problem is that storyboarding, unforeseeable experiences of human trainees is difficult because of humans are different. There are coming trainees from the industries to our prevention center with very largely varying professional experience. They behave all differently in such a virtual world, but the virtual world should be appropriate to every one of them in different ways. They have different learning behavior. You might know about learning types, David Kolb's learning style inventory, and other quite well-based scientific approaches to learning characteristics. People are different. And so people in the virtual world who learn, who train, need to be treated individually. And they have different preferences. Some like to see an explosion. Others have other preferences. Some would like to see some cute animal, but in a factory, we have to think about cute cats running around. There are so many varying aspects to be taken into account. And all this is dynamic independence on context conditions. For example, if co-trainees are there, some people are shy and behave differently. Trainees have, because they are human beings, have health conditions and they are in a certain mood. And so a human trainee may behave the one day different than the other. And a digital system that is, so to speak, intelligent, adapts to those needs of human learners. And what we always have is incomplete information. When we plan, when we design our games, when we are sitting together with our colleagues, the colleagues are domain experts like Hans Holger. The colleagues are VR specialists like Ronny. The colleagues are AI specialists like Oki. The colleagues are learning psychologists. The colleagues are educators. And when we discuss, we always are aware of the difficulties that we should know more about our human trainees and what they are going to do. But typically, we don't know. So we have to be prepared for a world in which the available information is insufficient. Fortunately, we have prior work. Oki has been publishing a book in 1996 about driving technical installations that are in a severe disturbance back to a normal regime of operation, a normal mode of operation. But if a severe disturbance occurs, you typically do not know the precise reason. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the problem. Information is highly incomplete. As a consequence, it's usually impossible at planning time, when you plan, to generate a plan that is guaranteed to work successfully. This is impossible because you will learn during the force of driving the system back into a normal mode of operation. You will learn what's in there, what the problem is. So to some extent, dynamic plan generation takes place at execution time and not hours or days or weeks or months before. Human trainees, especially those on a virtual time travel, human trainees are at least as complex as disturbed technical processes. Humans are so complex that the AI planning, the dynamic AI planning methodologies we have are appropriate to be carried over to planning what humans will experience in a more or less unforeseeable future in a dynamic virtual world. The key concepts we carry over and we adapt necessarily, so we adopt and adapt key concepts, are very roughly speaking the following. In Oki's work, a plan is a finite hierarchically structured family of directed graphs. This is a storyboard in our world. These graphs, there are graph theoretic underpinnings, are so-called pin graphs. They have ingoing nodes, in pins, and they have outgoing nodes, out pins, and those technicalities are necessary for a very correct, precise technical treatment. We don't do that here in this presentation, but we know it is necessary. We need the technological precision. So for an intuitive introduction, let's assume that we have just a family of graphs, and we'll see a few more details in a moment. Graphs have nodes and edges. Edges lead from one node to the other, say this comes first and this comes next. Sometimes there are branches, the branches have conditions. When nodes are elementary, then they have a semantics in the domain. In Oki's technical domain, they have a semantics such as heating up a generator for a certain time, heating up for a moment, or cooling down, or shutting something down, or opening a valve. Scenes have elementary meanings. Scenes in our game world have meanings such as waiting for user input, showing a cutscene, or playing an audio information, and things like that. And episodes are compound. Episodes are placeholders for more complex activities. Some of them are substituted later. So the substitution, the specification is suspended because at planning time, information is insufficient. So episodes are substituted by other graphs from the family. Therefore, the family is called a hierarchically structured family. Nodes of a higher level have may be substituted by graphs from a lower level. Even recursion is possible. So we arrive at a very expressive planning approach. There's a publication by Daniel Kirsten some years ago, and Daniel Kirsten was able with mathematical methods and with mathematical precision to prove that this planning approach is the most powerful existing planning approach basing on graph technology, formal languages, and the like, because of the dynamics. This is published, this is cited in our proceedings paper. There is no mystery. There is enormous power in that approach, and we carry it over to the specification of experiences to come. And as said before, graph substitution may be suspended as long as possible. Data come in during human behavior, and based on prior human behavior, the next decision may be the one or the other, but we need to know about the human behavior before. So when we are planning, we are not designing a plan, a single plan. A storyboard, in a sense, determines or specifies a space of plans, a potentially infinite space of plans. And during execution, one of these plans is implemented by step unfolding. That's the basic approach we have from AI planning, thanks to Oki's earlier work. Look, here is a very simple illustration. This is a trivial one, but we want to keep all that what we are presenting here understandable. Those who are interested in more details can contact us easily. That's no problem. And there are not infinitely many, but very many things to be said more precisely. Here on the left hand, we have a high-level graph. This high-level graph says there was a preceding activity. It's not specified what that is. Then there's a training session. And if this succeeds, there are two outcoming edges. If this succeeds, there's a following activity. And if the training session does not succeed, you remember the explosion you saw in Ronny's video. If an undesired event occurs, then we continue with time travel and come back and restart the training session again. And what takes place in the training session are several activities. And you see almost in the middle of the slide, a graph with action 1, 2, and 3. Those are first actions that can be executed immediately. And action 4 and 5 have to follow, maybe due to technological constraints. And this is designed by the domain experts with other specialists together. And when we play that graph, we play a storyboard. And we have also a technical term for that. We call that storyboard interpretation technology. A storyboard, such a family of graphs, is not compiled into a program or into a plan, but it is step by step interpreted, a distinction that is very familiar in software technology. So when we come for the first time to interpret the training session, the first graph you see here might be substituted. And the human entering that compound action now may choose training action 1 or 2 or 3 and may interact between them before going to training action 4 and 5. And then if the whole training action does not succeed, an undesired event occurs and we are sent back by time travel. The next time, perhaps another graph is substituted. And if this happens again, another graph is substituted. And what is substituted depends on dynamic data, on behavior of the human, and on many other things. We try to make that a bit more explicit. This is time travel dynamically in dependence on dynamically changing information. Here you see the substitution. We have taken the one graph and substituted into the place of the compound node that has there been sitting before. From time travel, there are 3 edges coming into the main training session. This is independence on the human's choice to what time point to travel back. In case of another undesired event, and perhaps one more undesired event, we have to control this. And we need to bring in much more intelligence and adaptivity in this general approach. Here's only time to speak about a few of these aspects here. The crucial problem, as said, is to adapt, right? If a trainee fails repeatedly, and humans behave, as said before, very differently. It is unforeseeable why and how often a trainee fails, and how the trainee masters the time travel. Therefore, we invoke the ideas and concepts and technologies, as I said, from dynamic plan generation, from artificial intelligence. The training system, the system we have here, by means of its flexible storyboard, is an adaptive system, a system that dynamically adapts to the needs that show in course of interaction. So the unfolding of the storyboard depends. It depends on the interaction history, on what happened before, and what happened before, perhaps in cycles of interaction. It depends also on the type of a trainee's mistake. Trainees may have always the same mistake in the training session and then causing the same undesired event. There may be varying mistakes. So the system has to take this into account. And the system, naturally, it's a digital system. It's able to record everything. The system is able to record this. And the system knows about the interaction history, and the system knows about the trainee's mistakes. And there are data in the trainee profile and the trainee model. Normally we have a model, and the instances are the profiles. The profiles are filled by concrete data about a human trainee. And from a trainee, we might know that one or the other is here not for the first time. And we know perhaps in the profile that the trainees have varying strengths and weaknesses. And so the system adapts to those things. And there are context conditions, including, as it's written here, the time of the day. And let me illustrate that. When we are training in the afternoon and when it's already very late, then there might be a good reason to guide the trainee to a success as soon as possible. We always want trainees to be successful. And Ronny will show you in a moment another video about this. But we want trainees to be successful. And if there's a shortage of time, the system has to adapt to these context conditions. The time of the day, like the weather, is somehow an external context condition. So when traveling back, a variety of new ideas occur, and we don't have enough space in our very short presentation here because there are many, many more things we have in our conceptualization, in our application, in our implementation. And I just want to stress one point here. Storyboarding fosters the design of innovations. We have discussed that for the first time in a paper with Johannes Winter, who made that game design for crime prevention in 2016. And here I have emphasized with a green line around just a simple idea. I just want to sketch that simple idea, and there are hundreds of that ideas, and just the one shall say pass pro toto, tell you what's possible. When we are facing trainees who fail repeatedly, and they choose actions to travel back, like say action 3. After several failures, the system might somehow jump in and do not send the trainee back to action 3, but to a twin action, which is almost identical with action 3, but with a helpful adaptive difference. For instance, a non-player character, another avatar, passing by and talking to the trainee and giving some useful hints. Or perhaps an erroneous action becoming impossible because something is blocked and cannot be used. So twin actions are not exactly the actions. And twin actions help to make the trainee successful in the very end. Storyboard graphs are usually very small objects. You see graphs here, and all these graphs are typical, real graphs. They have a fine granularity. We have lots of these graphs, so we have a very modular approach. And these storyboard graphs are ideal representations, of ideas, possibly alternative, contradictory even, possibly sometimes still immature, and ideas about didactics and game design, and teams doing the design these storyboards. They are sitting together, and they do that normally interdisciplinary. They are domain experts. They are VR experts like Ronny. There are AI experts like Oki. There are educators. There are psychologists, and they have different opinions. And the one opinion comes into a graph, and the other one is postponed or leads to a second variation of the graph, of a version. So this process takes time, takes place over time, and distributed in space. You can send an incomplete graph to someone. You can work on a server, work on the one graph, and then change to the other to see whether the other graph perhaps tells you what you can do in the one graph, and vice versa. Ideas might be preliminary for a long time. You may even, when a system is running, experiment with varying storyboards. Just take one graph off and plug another one into the storyboard. We call that plug and play. And you may have that design bottom up. There comes one with an idea. I have a great idea. Here is a little graph that explains that idea. And I have another idea. And others ask, oh, but where to bring that into our system? Let's make a top-down design and look for a corner where you can where we can accommodate your idea. And normally both directions work at once. And we have frequent revisions and extensions. So the graphs are the knowledge base of the designers, of the domain experts, of the game specialists. And as a result, they establish a virtual world. And in that virtual world, a game. And decisive is that trainees in the very end are successful and effective. And when we show you how this works in reality, in virtual reality.
Okay, let's go back in the factory. Remember, some things went wrong here. We take the pump, cable. And that was the result. Now we want to take the element of time travel. So, and this is now our wheel of time. And yeah, in the time tunnel, we can see all the interactions in the past, and we can go back in time and can consider which interaction, which object was wrong. Maybe the pump, of course. And then we can go back in time. We can undo the interaction, and then we can take the right pump and again the counter the pump method. And try the process again. Grounding, connection, power on, pump on, and start the process. And now everything is working properly. Finally, after that, we need to demount everything correctly. It's very fast here. And yeah. Then the task is complete, successful and safe.
Thank you for the success, Ronny. So we like to complete every training like this. So what you have seen is a sketch. Thank you for giving us that time. It was by far not enough time, but we are sure that time travel prevention games are something original, and we can demonstrate that they work, and we are willing to share the ideas and all the knowledge we have with all who are interested in. So thank you very much for your interest and for your attention, and we are ready to answer questions, and perhaps the really complex questions can be answered by email or by other talks, Zoom talks, WebEx talks, whatever comes up. But it's a great pleasure to share that. And even if we have something unique, we are willing to give that up for the benefit of all others who want to invoke related ideas, concepts, and technologies. Thank you a lot.
All right, thank you. That's really interesting stuff. That's really cool. We do have one question in the Q&A, which was a little bit earlier. So let's see, this is, do you also let the acting person do the incident analysis himself or herself before you publish the incident causes to the actor? So this was from a little bit back in the demo, but
I did not really get the question. I'm sorry for that. Maybe I can turn off my screen here. How can I do that?
Yeah, if you want to read it in the Q&A and see if you need it, maybe, and if not, maybe Reiner, who asked the question, is still around to qualify, because I think he did ask this a little bit earlier in the session. So whether the acting person gets to do the incident analysis himself or herself before you publish the incident cause. This was back at, I think, in an earlier stage of the demo.
This is very different what you with the persons who are trainees there. First, a trainee is, how to say, treated a bit harshly. When some undesired event happens, we just allow the trainee to travel back, but we do not interact. We leave the trainee alone in the virtual world. And when the trainee fails again, then we narrow this step by step. So the next time we prevent the trainee to go to certain places that make no sense. Nevertheless, it may happen that the trainee fails again. And then comes in the idea of twin actions and guidance. And what we really need more, we don't have that at the moment, we need more experience and evaluation with educators who tell you that this is psychologically reasonable. Because as I said, we are treating trainees harsh in the beginning. I'm not sure whether this is good, but reality is like that, right? Industrial reality.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, no, that's interesting because as I was watching, wondering a little bit about, and I think you kind of just touched on it, the decisions that you made about when to intervene and when to let them just fail, and I guess, you know, how much they need to fail before you feel like you want to help them out a little bit more. And, you know, especially because failure is such a big, you know, I mean, when you fail, I mean, it explodes, right? I mean, there's no, you know, there's a really big failure. So yeah, I don't know if you thought about whether there was guidance available earlier if they wanted, or if you played around with that.
Yeah, so the simplest idea we have implemented is just counting mistakes and step by step narrowing down. And there's still a discussion, 3 mistakes are acceptable or 5, something like that. Yeah, and when we reach that end, and there we have discussions with Holger, because he is a nice person, he allows them more, and other people allows them less, and this needs evaluation actually. In the very end, they are just guided. They are just guided to the success. Try this, and they succeed. And an experience is that humans who see an explosion and later succeed like to tell others about that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
I damaged the whole installation, but in the very end, I succeeded.
No, absolutely. No, I totally believe that. I mean, I've seen people in things that we've done in you know, retail customer service where they were very pleased to, you know, they angered a customer and he yelled at them, and then the next time through they were able to do it again and keep them happy, and they were pretty excited about that. And you know, there wasn't even an explosion. So I totally understand the situation. Kind of related to that, and probably this would be a future thing if it is even necessary. So you mentioned that you're counting mistakes. Are there situations where there are kind of categories of mistakes and you start to get a handle on, you know, that someone's making a similar mistake and there's something you might want to do a little bit differently? Or is that maybe down the line?
Yeah, there are categories. There are levels of severeness. I'm not sure whether this is a reasonable English word, but an explosion is worse than just some gas coming out and the people feeling ill and leaving the factory for a moment. Right. So we have different levels of that. And what we not yet are able to present is something like a taxonomy. Because if we had we don't have that, honestly. But if we had a taxonomy, we could think about how such a taxonomy allows us to drive the adaptivity. We don't have that.
Right. No,
but
exactly.
But you are pointing to the weakness and to the real point. But that's great to us. I'm very sure after this meeting here is over, our friends will speak about taxonomies. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. No, that's great. And I think related to that, one more thing to think about if you haven't already, maybe you have, I guess, is, you know, you mentioned the severity of the, you know, of the mistake, but is an explosion always caused by a single mistake? Are there things that you might want to do down the line later to look at sort of, you know, combinations of mistakes that would lead to the bad outcome? Like, I know when we've done things with human interactions, we've experimented with trying to track, okay, you know, I can say one thing and, you know, all right, it's not the greatest thing, but my manager gets a little bit angry. But then once I've said 3 different things, or, you know, said 2 things and come in late, then all of a sudden I'm going to get fired. But it wasn't any one thing, it was the accumulation of all of those things. So I don't know if that's something that you've been able to account for yet. And this, I think this is great. So there's just so many directions to go, but I'm curious about some of the future possible directions.
I suppose, Ronny and or Hans Holger, if you contradict, please feel free to do so. I suppose for the time being, we have just the single mistake caused accidents. But there are very different mistakes for the one accident. You can also have material that just by filling causes some electricity. If you have a sack with material that you let that rush into a container, then if the sack is not grounded, you may also get an explosion. So we have varying things with the same effect. But Ronny, maybe this is good for you. Maybe Holger even more. We have to think about, we are challenged to make it even more exciting. Like reality, that is even more exciting.
Yeah, no, there's something to that, that in reality, sometimes it's really just one action that causes a consequence, and sometimes it's accumulation of smaller things that independently would never be sufficient, but combined are the ones that cause the reaction. And that's obviously much more to track and much more complication. And, I think trying to keep track of some internal variables that are tracking, the state of things and something like that, but it's an interesting direction. So this is fantastic. Really, tremendously enjoyed this and seeing what you're doing, and the realistic feel, and the way you throw people in to give them a chance to experiment, and all of that. It's just been really a lot of fun for me to see. Any other questions quickly from anyone else before we go? We're kind of down to about the last several seconds before the clock strikes 3 in the afternoon here in the US. And thanks for staying up late for you. I know we're on Eastern time, and not everybody is on Eastern time. So thanks for doing this through the evening in Germany.
Let me make a comment, David, please.
Sure, please.
Thank you for that wonderful event. It is so stimulating, right, to be here. And you see, we are getting stimulating questions. It is provoking us to do something substantial, not just a bit better, really substantial, to apply again next year. This is really stimulating, and thank you. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic! That's so nice of you to say, and I'm enjoying it tremendously, and we have just such a really an overwhelmingly fantastic group of people this year, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. So it's great to hear, and obviously we'd love to have you back next year and in the years to come. Hopefully, just get bigger and better. And thanks again to Emma for
people agreeing. David, this goes to you. All people agree. Do not agree with me, but direct it to you.
Okay, all right. I'll accept the agreement, and certainly on behalf of our team as well, as I think you've seen there are a lot of people involved in making this work. So it's been great to have you. So fantastic. Well, wonderful. Well, it's great to talk with you, and hopefully next year even in person in New York, and really enjoy this. So we can move to a break. So we'll let everyone take a little bit of a break. This is really just a terrific session, and stay in touch through all the various methods, and we'll see people back here as much as you can. It's getting later and later some places, but for those of you who can make it back at 3:30 Eastern for the final session of the day here. So, all right. Well, thanks once again, and it's great talking to all of you.
Take care.